Here's the Canon R7. Here's the Canon R5. I primarily use the Canon cameras for photography. I do shoot video. I've been using Panasonic for all my video and traditional video camcorders. So the R5, I used to have a lot of the Canon DSLRs before they moved to mirrorless. I had the Canon EOS R, and then now the R5 I think it has been the best photography camera I've ever owned. I love it. And the reason why I got the R7 as opposed to the R6 is that I wanted a backup camera for when I'm doing my gigs, my photography gigs. And I have an assortment of Canon lenses, and I'm going more towards the RF mount rather than the EF mount. I could have adapters, but I wanted to stick with Canon because of the lenses and because of the price point of the R7 and the quality. I decided to go with the R7. The full frame didn't matter to me as much because I'm also considering the R7 as a supplementary camera for crop shots. I tend to frame wide because when I get hired for a lot of photography gigs, the clients want large frames because they use it for social media and their websites and their banner ads. So I need to shoot as wide as possible in order for their graphic designers to crop and to move things around and to format different aspect ratios for web. So having a camera with a lot of megapixels helps because I shoot wide and crop in later in post. So with the R6, I believe it has a 20 or 24 megapixel sensor, and the R7 has over a 30 megapixel sensor. I think it's like a 33 megapixel. So I'm able to crop in with the R7. I think it's similar megapixels to with the Canon EOS R. If I wanted a closer up shot, let's say I have the RF 35 millimeter here. On the full frame, it's 35 millimeters. But on the crop sensor here, this is closer to like a 56 or something like that millimeter lens. If I'm carrying two bodies, I just swap the lens and I get a more use out of these lenses. It also uses the same battery. I get a really long battery life with my testing of the R7 so far, much longer than the R5. The R5, I was getting a great battery life, but the R7, much better battery life than the R5. The R7 is ideal for this 16 millimeter f2.8 RF lens. This gets you like a 25 millimeter or something like that. Another reason why I wanted to stick with Canon is that I do use strobes for certain jobs, and I use the Flashpoint / Godox brand of strobes. Here's the trigger for the strobes, and it is a Canon trigger. So all I have to do is put it on the hot shoe here, and then shoot after I set up my flash stuff, and I can just interchange this and put it on this one, and everything works exactly the same. So for my photography jobs, it's just a no-brainer to get a backup camera that is also Canon for the lens choices and also for the flash to be the same compatibility, as well as the batteries. This just makes sense. A cheaper way to have a backup camera. I haven't done a lot of video, so in this video, I'm going to show some test shots that I did walking around just shooting the R7, not really comparing it to the R5. But I had a setup here where I used this exact combination. So this is the EF to RF with their variable filter, and then I used the Sigma 18 to 35 1.8, very popular lens that's been around for a while, and a lot of people have been using it. Since this is a crop censored lens, this I thought would be an excellent combination. It's still kind of large for the R7 once you add on that adapter, but I was rolling with this setup here, and I was riding the ND wheel here, which is maybe the weak point of this whole adapter. This wheel doesn't have a good tactile feel to it where you know really what the stops are. I feel like it can just wiggle too easily. And then once it gets really dark, I believe there's some color shifting with the ND. But I was rocking with this, and from 18 to 35, it's a decent focal range. I wish I had a wider angle view for a lot of things, but what I wanted to test out was what the image stabilization would be like, because this lens, the Sigma, does not have lens stabilization. So I was using the IBIS and also the digital stabilization, and what I found were there might be some ticks with this setup that could be fixed in firmware. I don't know if I have updated the firmware of this lens. I don't know if you can to be compatible with this. But what was happening was I was getting a lot of jittery motion when I was doing this handheld. I was holding it as steady as I could when I was doing some video, but because I had the in-body image stabilization and the digital stabilization on, it was causing some weird effects with this particular adapter, the ND variable adapter. I did other shots where I disabled both the in-body image stabilization and the digital stabilization, and I just tried to hold it as steady as possible, and that ended up fixing all the issues with the jitteriness of the whatever the image stabilization was doing. So I'll show those clips. I like this combo. I think this works if I am going to shoot video, but like I said earlier, I'm primarily going to use the R7 as photography only.